is truly a remarkable individual. Dr. George D. Yancopoulos, President and CSO of Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. We are honored to have him with us this evening. Very briefly, George D. Yancopoulos, MD, PhD, Dr. Yancopoulos, is Regeneron's co-founder, president, and chief scientific officer. Over the last 30 years, George has worked with his longtime partner, Dr. Leonard S. Schleifer, to build Regeneron into a leading science-driven biotech company which has invented in-house in its own laboratories and developed 7 FDA-approved medicines for serious diseases, including cancer, vision-threatening eye diseases, heart disease, atopic dermatitis, asthma, and rheumatoid arthritis. George is a unique biotech leader who has actually co-invented, along with key members of his team, such as Neil Stiles, Lou Murphy, Sam Davis, and Nick Papadopoulos, Regeneron's foundational technologies for target and drug discovery, such as TRAP, Velocigene, I apologize, and Velaco-immune platforms, as well as its breakthrough medical treatments, including IUA. That's enough? Okay. Who was a valedictorian at Bronx High School of Science and at Columbia University.
Thank you for that overwhelming introduction, and your grace and distinguished guests, most importantly to the graduating students and to the parents and family and friends and teachers who made this all possible. I really thank you for the honor of addressing you. And I'm really touched to be here in what feels like the heart of Greece here in America. I'm a little embarrassed that I'm not going to be addressing you in Greek, which is actually my first language. But I've gotten a little rusty over the years. So even though my words will be English, I hope you will be convinced that my heart and my soul are 100% Greek. And I also want to remember and honor all those who came before us, who suffered and fought and persevered, just so we could be here celebrating graduation today. My family comes from a town in the very north of modern Greece called Astoria. Do we have any historians here? It's a beautiful town built on a lake, surrounded by mountains. We consider ourselves Greek Macedonians, that is, the true Macedonians. And when I was small, my father showed me the mountains surrounding our lake, and he told me never to forget how much blood and sweat was spilled on those mountains, just so we could be standing there that day. He told me never to forget that I owed so much to those untold generations that came before us, and that the way to repay them was to make sure that I made something of my life and contributed to the world so as to bring them honor. So who am I? Well, when I look back about 40 years, I think I was not unlike many of you, just starting out. And then I got to live the great American dream. Maybe I can tell you a little bit about my story, and that can help you imagine the infinite possibilities of your futures. And I'm going to start a little bit at the end before I come back to the beginning. So as you heard, I'm a scientist. I'm what they used to call a gene hunter. People consider me pretty successful. In my 30s, I was ranked as one of the top 10 scientists in the world. I'm just saying this not to brag, but get some credit with you guys. I You heard I started a biotechnology called Regeneron, which is now one of the 5 biggest companies in the world. And I think we became successful the right way. That is, we didn't do it by coming up with some devious business scheme, but by doing something that I think is very important for humanity. We invented more important new medicines over the last decade than anyone had in a similar period in history. You heard we have a leading drug to cure blindness from diseases like diabetes and age-related macular degeneration. Another is a new treatment to prevent heart attacks and heart disease. A third is a breakthrough therapy for severe allergic diseases, including diseases like asthma and atopic dermatitis. And we came up with several new treatments for previously incurable forms of cancer. So how do we do this? Personally, I love superhero movies. Any of you guys see the X-Men movies? Okay, well, X-Men and women really exist. You guys know that? It's true. There are simply people who walk amongst us, maybe some of you, that have special mutations in your genes that give you special powers. Well, our strategy at Regeneron was simply to find these X-men and women, and we found X-men who were resistant to heart disease. We found X-men and women who felt no pain, those whose vision could resist blindness, those whose bodies on their own could fight cancer. Even X-men actually had really big muscles. And we cloned their genetic mutations, and then we made medicines that could give the power of these mutations to regular people. That was our simple strategy that led to all these important new medical breakthroughs. There was a lot of science around this approach, but it really was pretty much that simple. And our advantage was just that other people hadn't really thought about this simple approach before as a way to come up with important new medicines. And with all these new medicines has come incomprehensible, at least to me, riches. How many of you guys know who Bruno Mars is? Yeah? You know that song he has, something about wanting to be a billionaire so freaking bad? And wanting to be on the cover of Forbes? Yeah, well, been there, done that. Forbes also every year selects the most innovative companies in the whole world, and every year for the last 10 years we've been in the top 10. Last year we were behind Tesla, and don't get me started on that. Does anybody here know when actually the electric car was invented? 1896. Not so innovative. Okay. But anyway, so that's where we are now. But let me get back to the beginning and tell you how I got there and to what I owe it all. So, just as I am sure for all of you, being Greek is what defines me. I grew up in a Greek immigrant family in New York City, all over the place. We were very poor, but I never even realized it. My parents came in the 1950s after World War II and the Civil War in Greece, and because of that, they never finished school. They never had much opportunity, and they never had much money. But most importantly, I was lucky to have the greatest parents and grandparents in the world, and the greatest extended family of cousins and uncles and aunts. And we all lived together and supported each other. And I'm sure you all agree there is nothing better than growing up in a big Greek family. As I said, I lived all over New York. I was born in Manhattan. I was baptized in the Bronx. And when I was small, we moved right here, almost across the street. This was my neighborhood for a while, and St. Demetrios was my church. But we kept moving, and by high school, my church was Transfiguration of Christ in Corona, where I was in the Goya and played basketball. I had a lot of dreams. My parents always insisted on only speaking Greek at home. And when I went to public school on the first day, PS 11 in Woodside, Queens, I'll never forget that day. Because when I walked into that school, I did not even know that English existed. I was in shock. I had no idea what was happening. And I was very slow. Some people are good at learning languages. I was very slow at learning a new language. And I actually failed the first grade. Back then, they didn't have programs like English as a second language, and there was no such thing as political correctness. So they just put all the kids who failed first grade into what they then called the MR class, for mentally retarded. But my parents and my grandparents wouldn't let me think that there was anything wrong with me. In fact, they made me believe the opposite, that even then, that there was greatness inside of me. And how did they make me believe this? They told me about the greatness in our Greek ancestry, from Homer to Herodotus, from Odysseus to Alexander, from Hippocrates to Socrates. And they told me that all that greatness still lived inside of me and inside of all Greeks. They told me that the blood of Alexander literally flowed in my veins. And because of that, I could conquer anything. It doesn't really matter whether any of that was true. It only mattered that they made a 7-year-old boy believe that. My father told me that America was the greatest country in the world. And if you were just willing to work for it, you could accomplish anything here. He told me that his role, because he had no education and no training, was simply to work hard so his children could get a better education and they could go on and do anything. And most importantly, he told me that Greeks were inherently smarter, more creative, and harder working than any other Americans, and that we were destined to succeed. Once again, it doesn't really matter if any of that is true. The only thing that matters is that I believe everything that he told me. And the most important story my father told me was about a hero and a role model very close to home that I grew up with. But when I met was a broken old man. And he claimed by telling me his story that he would prove that I could overcome anything. He told me my own founder tale, where I came from. How many of you here are named after your grandfathers? Raise your hands, yeah. Everybody? Okay. It's our tradition, right? Well, so am I. My papu's name is my name. Demetrios Yancopoulos. My father told me I was named after a very special person. He told me my father was born in 1883. Think about that. Think how long ago that was that I'm connected to. Back then, he was born as a Turkish slave in a little village. Many in his family were killed by the Turks, and he became a freedom fighter, but he was captured. He managed to escape, I don't know how, and he somehow found his way to Vienna, Austria. I can't even imagine how someone from a small Korea can escape and make it to Vienna. There, he saw the magic of electricity. You see, he saw electric lights for the very first time. There was nothing like it in his little village in the 1800s. And he was sure it was pure magic. And he wanted to learn everything that he could about this magic. He didn't even know how to read or write, and he couldn't speak German. How many of you guys know that in Vienna there's a very famous old opera house, the Vienna Opera House? Well, believe it or not, his job was sweeping the floors of the famous old Vienna Opera House. But he decided right then and there that he wanted to devote his life to this magic and learn everything that he could about it. So he started by taking the librettos, the stories from the operas every night home with him, and used them to try to learn German. And somehow, miraculously, he did. And somehow, unbelievably to me, he got into university. And somehow and unbelievably became an electrical engineer. Learning how to build electrical power plants, because his dream was to go back to his homeland, now liberated, and bring back the magic of electricity. And he managed to do this. He went back to Greece and built many of Greece's first electrical power plants, bringing light to his patria. And with this, he achieved incomprehensible wealth, becoming one of the richest Greeks at the time. But just to show you how fragile life can be, and sometimes we just move in circles, at the height of my grandfather's success, the Nazis came. They nationalized his plants, imprisoned him, and he was left penniless. And my father, who, unlike his father, had been born with a silver spoon in his mouth, very rich, was now a teenager with nothing. And he joined the army and essentially became a freedom fighter, just like his father had been. So what's the lesson in all this? Once again, what mattered to me was that my father made me believe that if my grandfather could rise from being a slave to such heights, and that I was named after him, I carried his name, I could do anything as well. Whatever I achieved in life, it was only because my father made me believe that I could do it. So what have I learned, and is there maybe something you can learn from my journey? As I said, I think 40 years ago, I was maybe not that different from who you are now. I was a young Greek kid coming out of high school. Back when I was your age, I saw many problems in the world, and I was inspired to use the power of science to try to make a difference in the world by curing disease. I'm sure you all see many challenges facing our world, and you dream about offering hope and solutions and changing the world. You're at the beginning of the incredible adventure of life. And in your adventure, you have an incredible advantage. I believe in the magic of the human spirit, and there is no greater human spirit than that of the Greeks. Your great Hellenic history flows through you, both empowering you, but also obligating you to do honor to the sacrifices of your parents, as well as of all the others who came before you. You're all Hellenists, and it's your turn to go out and to conquer, whether it be disease, global warming, poverty, hunger, politics, or business. Go out, try to help your fellow man, and change the world for the better. It will not be easy. There will be many challenges and failures along the way. You will struggle, and you will have to find many times a new way. But in fact, I encourage you to embrace these struggles as opportunities to prove who you really are, to reinvent yourself, and to consider audacious new possibilities and paths. I'll never forget the pride of my father, who fought as a Greek in World War II against the Nazis, and who helped bring the first victory against what at the time seemed an unconquerable evil empire. He always reminded me, because of that first victory against the Nazis, Winston Churchill said, "From here on forward, all heroes will be known as Hellenists." That was a headline in the New York Times. You can look it up. Well, you're all Hellenists. You all have greatness inside of you. And it's time to go out and be heroes. Good luck.